So we're gonna get started. We got a couple more people trickling in, but we were scheduled to start 5 minutes. So let's get going. Our speaker today is Bill West. He provides, he's a professional valuation service, and he also does your broker businesses, right? He sells businesses. So he's going to be speaking for us today about how to best do exit planning for attorneys. I think specifically small, solo, mid-sized
very much
local practitioners that is going to be directly valuable for the local bar. And in particular, he's going to make a slant for us, Will's Trust and Estates practitioners, estate planners. So welcome, Bill. Yeah, I'm very excited to have you and really looking forward to getting to know more about how we can better plan for ourselves.
Familiar faces. This is the, when you were just starting up, right? That was wow. And Sarah was right there too. So Sarah and I worked together in banking forever. She doesn't, part of what I'm doing, little presenter that came out of, she wouldn't realize it, but one of our mergers that we went through was the origin of my valuation system. So nice to meet everybody. Doug is joining us too. He'll find his way up here. Yeah. I have a picture right now. We'll see. He'll find his way up. I'm sure he would have beat me. So that's why he's second guessing me. Anyway, so Doug Crawford's with us. Dakota does a lot of evaluation setup and customer coordination info for us. Okay.
It's a microphone.
Perfect. Excellent. So, and Doug is a partner with me. He does business sales, business follow up, keep up with clients and everything. So we'll introduce him when he gets in. Put together a couple things very specific for you, more small firm specific than estate planning specific, but there is a little bit that addresses in there. Very much just in general business. It's very, very similar for many businesses. You guys are more akin to when we do bank mergers, right? There's some disclosure requirements and those kind of things that I enjoy doing the more complex kind of transactions. I wind up from banking again. We had one of our lenders was a specialist in daycare centers, preschools, and those are obviously complicated to get through closing. So, but I do enjoy working on those. I love the regulated, the complex kind of tasking. So I got a little handout for you. Got a few handouts for you.
Exit planning means something other than being the star.
I didn't put that one on here. That might come under wind down.
Or the it's the same thing.
I am not gonna be behind that, man.
So, Doug is usually the one who interrupts me. I will start talking and I will read through this entire page, but definitely there's a lot of information here. It's a ton of information for 3-4 sheets of paper work. So there's a lot of information to go through with you. But please interrupt me, ask questions, whatever kind of as we go along. So first is just a very much an orientation kind of piece of it. I mean, you guys, this is estate planning, right? So you guys you do this for your client. Think about it for yourself, right? Shoemakers, kids, are going shoeless, but think about yourself. I definitely we do work with quite a few law practices and things. Again, that shoemakers, the things you would expect. We'll talk about it once we get to the valuation piece. But things you would expect people to have done themselves to think about, and they're in business 30, 40 years down the road, and it's stuff that you should address. Yeah, so very much thinking about your practice, thinking about what you do, what an exit involves. So there's we really work on 3 kinds of exits is how I describe them. So or two main courses of exits. So we start with evaluation, typically valuing the business, and we'll go into detail on that, how we go about the valuation, what it involves. But we start with evaluation, and that starts conversations, right? So many business brokers, acquisition experts, historically you got a hammer and that's your, that's your tool. So every business should be for sale. I don't think of it that way because of my background. It's business. Generally there's one, maybe two, maybe three times that you might sell a business in your life, but it's a very occasional event. It's something that you think about and consider for a long time, and you're only going to do it once. So, but it's up to you, and it's up to your paths, and there's a lot of considerations that come into there rather than just selling your business to a stranger, right? So you might have someone on your staff that you want to sell it to. Is frequently how we wind up going selling to people on their staff, and then so we've got external sales, which would be the business brokerage selling to a stranger. And then internal sales, and we split that into, it's a key person, it's with you to be another attorney that's on your staff. Or we also do ESOPs, which would be very difficult for this scenario, but ESOPs are the other kind of path that we work along. So transition paths, I said internal exit, third-party sale, gradual transition is frequently happens within law firms where you're bringing in a partner, bringing in someone of counsel or somehow to be a successor to you, and you're kind of managing that very well over time. Third party sales, exactly what we discussed. So we market it. You're looking for somebody to come in to purchase your practice. A wind down might be you got disbarred or whatever. Yeah, but there are a lot of wind downs in this business. It's just it's a natural. It's difficult.
A bunch of
We're gonna be more seats. All right, there's more seats. There's more chairs.
I gave us enough.
Yeah, the chairs.
Everybody.
I did.
So, Louis.
Bill.
Bill.
Yeah, Doug Crawford, acquisition experts. I'm with Bill and Dakota. Pleasure to be here.
Excellent. So we started presenting a little bit, kind of got into it. I told them that you would interrupt me with questions. I tried to prod them today, but yeah, they haven't jumped in yet, so it may be up to you. Anyway, so a wind down, that's what we were kind of jokingly, but it does happen a lot in law practices, right? It's wind down, close up shop, transfer files. It's definitely a probably happens more in law practices than other businesses. So what transfers in a sale? You're transferring your client relationships, open matters, open files, the staff, the system, your trust funds are obviously going along with the business, receivables, cash, and those kind of items. Your liquid items are typically are typically going to stay with the seller. So through the day of the sale is typically going to belong to the seller. So receivables, any work that they've done, is going to stay with whoever's with the attorney selling the practice, and then the new attorney is going to pick up on, and he's going to pick up. There's going to be a lot of with your matters, right? Trying to figure out what work's been done. There's going to be some major calculation done in that once you get down towards closing, to make sure you have a good system. You make sure everybody understands and you're passing along what is proper there, and that's defined later payments. Okay. Unique to a law practice. So obviously it's got to be an attorney buying your practice. I get a lot of calls for Florida. I get a lot of calls, period, for businesses that are from out of state. And it's the same with law practices. People think they can come in here. They hear MSO and things that they can do in other states. You hear Morgan might be going public. So they think that Florida is open for business and that anybody can come in. So a lot of when I'm working with law practice, it's educating those New York, Texas, wherever they're from. Saying you really can't do that. You need to be licensed, get admitted to the bar. If you really think about coming here and finding a practice, go ahead and get admitted to the bar, because nobody's going to want to wait around to see if maybe you get admitted to the bar in 9 months. So definitely licensed successor. Whole practice are an area, so you can't cherry pick files, right? It's the whole practice is what's typically sold. There are times where you sell a piece of the practice. It might be the estate planning piece, or it might be might be real estate, title. Sometimes frequently I've seen title companies in the past when business gets really good and smart attorneys will sell that when everything's going in the right direction. But it does need to be the whole practice area. And then client notice, that's where, like I said, it's kind of comparable back when you transfer, you have to notify. Yours is actually pre-closing those that you have to notify the clients and get in there. So you've got, educate me if I'm incorrect here, because you guys are the expert, but my understanding is that they have to be notified pre-closing. If you've got matters that are if you're in litigation or something on it, then you're going to need court approval too, right? So there's many steps that once you get down to closing to try and make sure everything's checked off and done properly. Files and original wills, obviously those anything original, anything it's all data now mainly, but original files and any kind of data would go along with the new business. I am very much open for questions, or like I said, I'm going to read through this entire thing.
Can you give me a copy of that?
Sure, of course. Did everybody get a copy? Anyone listening?
There's a few extra.
Thank you. Okay, everybody got one up?
I'm writing with
Sure.
our non-person practice right now.
Are you?
And
Yes.
I'm very thankful that he was very prepared and organized and everything to make my job a lot easier. And made me very aware of how horrible it would be if I suddenly died for my inventory lawyer.
Mhm.
So you're getting prepared for your exit, either voluntarily or suddenly, make a good plan.
Yes, yes, that's Bob's great. Was a super guy, and that's obviously a valuable practice that's getting wound down now. That's
I mean, just never could find anybody good enough.
Mhm. Yeah.
Which is
Yeah, and that goes to that, and we'll talk about that in a second here, but yeah, him and Joe really were
yeah.
the practice there, so, yeah, trying to do something different, you have to think way ahead to do something different, or then you're destined for a wind down. Yeah, good point. Related to, somebody related, I'm doing this now, yeah, yeah.
Hey, Robert, the response.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, super good guy, super attorney, well, salt of the earth gentleman. Okay, so we moved through license successor, moved through those requirements. Staff, people are concerned about their staff, right? Especially small practices. It's more family than business sometimes, right? So you want to be taking care of them. Typically, the staff goes along with the business. There may be times where you're doing something else, but typically, especially in a law firm, that what they're buying is it's you, it's your people, it's your knowledge. They're going to want to keep your staff. If you got somebody that's really key, really pivotal, they're probably going to wind up with some kind of agreement to stay on. Definitely, if there's SBA financing, we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But yeah, a bank's going to want to see that you've got continuity going on there and that you're able to continue.
Like there's a goodwill.
Yes, 100%. That's what you're selling is the goodwill. That's very much
That's
that's
so fun.
we're coming to that here for sure. Okay, so staff stay, key agreements potentially, benefits payroll obviously change hands, compensation terms that, like I said, they're going to want to keep your people, so they're going to want to make them happy. And then telling them, usually it's right at closing. I've had, again, it's family, it's family.
Spring on somebody.
Yeah.
By the way.
Yeah, it is, but it's difficult. People take things uncertainty, right? They don't know the buyer, they don't know anything. So yeah, people will assume the worst.
Yeah.
And do the worst. I had a preschool that I was working on, and they were sure that they could tell the director, and wow, she started blasting them on Google reviews and everything else you could possibly imagine. So yeah, keep it close. Yeah, that was a surprise for them. So it took us another 6 months to kind of get down the road. Yeah. Anyway, all right. So deal structure. It's you guys are. You guys are an incredibly experienced bunch. Obviously, it's cash at closing. There is frequently we use SBA financing. Cash is if people have cash, they want to hang on to it, so that they're pretty typically going to use SBA financing. With that, there's again, with your, involvement in the business, you're wanting to pass along that goodwill, you want to see they're wanting to see the customer being continue with them. So earnouts, a performance structure, some kind of, something in a small seller note, perhaps behind the SBA is definitely frequently, something that you will do. Seller note or an earnout, right? So earnouts, earnouts is that's the common word, common term. I think people know what I'm saying when I say an earnout. SBA doesn't allow earnouts though, but they will allow a note that's a forgivable note. So it's the same kind of mechanism, you're just structuring it differently. And they somehow love those where they do not like earnouts. So what a buyer asks for, what we're looking for in valuations, typically it's that 3 to 5 years. Typically it's only 3 years. Very few will ask for further back than that, but typically at least the last 3 years of tax returns, financial statements, probably accounts receivable in there. They may upfront ask for some work in progress stuff, but usually that's down the road in due diligence, moving towards closing, especially that you're going to want to keep that updated. But really, to get started, it's mainly your financial statements, and I generally have those on file that show to a buyer owner compensation, any personal expenses. We'll talk about that as we get to evaluation and how I go about valuing the practice. So, and then in due diligence, it's going to get much deeper. And in due diligence, it's every single due diligence is different. It's every single buyer, every single seller, every single business. People have things that they like, that they're tuned into, that they've been tuned into for 10 or 20 years, and that's what they want to see, and they're going to drill into those items. And some people want very little. It just depends. So totally up to the buyer and what the business has available. And client matter list, I've got open inventories that really going to be too much in your business, obviously. Fee arrangements, those kind of things, accounts receivable. So your unbilled work and how you're going about that. Trust account records are going to be incredibly important for you guys. And then there's the sequence. So we are very early in this discussion. This is part of it, right? So it's exit planning. How do you think about your business? How do you go to? Before I skip along, anybody want to ask questions in the last section or?
The work in progress you're talking about.
Yes.
What are you disclosing to somebody, because there seems some ethical issues that might be popping up there?
Yeah, well, you have to keep things confidential until the end. Is that what you're?
No, I mean, what are they asking about? What would the potential buyer be asking about works in progress? You know, just how many estate plans do you have going on, or, you know?
Where you're at in the process with them is more that. So if it's an active file rather than something that's sitting there, if it's just sitting there, you've done all the work and it's completed, that's not really work in progress. That's a trust bank that you have. But if it's an active court case, something like that you're working on, you're billing for hours, you got so much work coming up on it, where you at in the case. Again, every case is going to be different, but
well, that makes it sound like things move really quickly because on it, because it's like, I can tell you right now that, you know, we just filed a partition action or whatever, but, you know, 3 months from now, oh, by the way, that's all gone now. So their interest is more like what your running business hours are.
As you're going through the sale, so it's going to be a month's process as you're going through the sale. So it's going to change as you go through the process, but definitely as you get closer to that, it's going to get more and more specific until you get to the point of closing. And you're going to want to say, okay, I'm picking up the file here, and you're getting paid here. I've gotten paid up to this point, and that's what you're honing in on is those facts.
All right, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, so transaction sequence, again, I'm speaking to, but we're very early in the process here. So it's planning, it's thinking about it, it's putting your mind on right. That's I say I got into this business because 30 years ago I was in banking and I was helping people start off in business, and I probably said to you then, begin with the end in mind, right? And so 20, 30 years later, they started coming back to me and saying, okay, I've been at this for 20 years. What do I do next? So this is you thinking about it. So you could be 30 years away, you could be 3 years away. could be 6 months away for you, but you're beginning to think about it. So beginning to think about your value, how you built your business. These valuations, I still want to skip there. I'll show you the valuations in a minute. So having a valuation, having your business value, knowing how it operates and works from a numbers basis. When I do these valuations, just laying them out in a different format really educates business owners on how their business is operating. We can see things that we'll describe to you in a second that are educational and informative to business owners. So baseline's evaluation, and then it comes into preparation. So getting ready, making sure you got the files. So you can probably tell us a little bit about preparation and things that should be done that maybe are overlooked. And
Well, having all the contact information, every file is helpful.
yeah,
So I was lucky with Joe and them. They sent all the problems failing for a while, so everybody knew what was coming. But the file just sat there and I kept up to date. Those are the ticking time bombs. We've got a couple of calls from things because in estate planning, you don't know when your client's going to need you until they get sick or suddenly die or something.
Right.
So a lot of them is the real estate.
Mhm.
So usually we got a couple of aftermath of closing we still have to wind out, but nothing huge. But you can have everything about the client in the file and contact information updated in every file, and any competent lawyer can pick it up and figure out what's going on with a couple of phone calls. But if you're just random, like my office having stacks and stacks of papers over there. I mean,
Right, yes.
I'd help my son if he had to come in and figure all that stuff out. So doing this has made me very determined to be better at it.
Where would you start?
Cleaning off my desk. This has been my goal for about 6 months now.
Where did you start with them? Did you just open a filing cabinet and say, this is where I?
Well, first they go in a box,
Mhm,
then I go to a box,
mhm.
and then we've gone through. I've had my grandson from Oxford come in and start going through the old files and cataloging them and doing all that. If you can keep a spreadsheet of all your clients
Right.
and do all that, then you've got a really valuable data source. But in a practice where you're a sole practitioner, most people, unless you hire a full-time bookkeeper type person to do that, files can get very disorganized unless you make it a routine day to bring them all into order.
Mhm.
But the more in order they are, the easier it's going to be to convince somebody you got something to sell or something. It's easier to make sure the clients has got to be the first priority because they drop through the cracks. When you practice law, as long as a lot of us, you've lasted this long because the clients know you care more about them than your bottom line. And so it's just being able to pass on enough about the client that the next professional can realize who this person is and what they need and what is important to them. Because the great thing about estate planning is every file is different, every person is different, every family is different. And it's hard to pass on that years of experience with the client. So in practice like ours, it would be almost essential that the transitioning out lawyers spend at least 6 months to a year with the new person making the introductions. But unless you've got long-term staff like I did, my clients would much rather talk to my therapist than me. They're better looking. They're better looking when your work is done.
Right.
In fact, all of my estate planning meetings now, I have my paralegal sit in, so I can just pay attention and answer questions, and she's kept all of the information, and she can produce documents.
You do it once in a while.
He's my. I used to do it all by myself and keep my notes. Yeah, I'm a player, I don't know what the hell those notes meant.
So this is a traditional established practice that has paper files and filing cabinets that you packaged up. What do you guys with a more modern, it's easier now. Are there systems and things that make the transfer?
Yep, the other thing, Bob, you scan most of the files in there, so there's not paper.
Wow.
Let's take it all paper. We do scan the new stuff, there's tons of old stuff.
Yeah.
In estate planning, sometimes we're reopening the file that's 20 or 30 years old. It's interesting. It's funny.
Well, like whatever you can do to get electronic now is, so that they scan those is really good. You can transfer things. So buyers are looking for information quickly, and the quicker you can hand it off. So having it electronically is definitely a huge step.
Yeah, especially when you can compile it and digest it a lot quicker. But, like I said, I'm learning all my shortcuts.
Are there case management systems now or something that would capture and all that would be just ready? So it's turned over access to a system.
If you make yourself do all the inputting you need to get that work.
Yep.
So I haven't gotten that.
We utilize, and having been in banking for 30 years, banking, we use a CRM, like that's how we manage our relationships. It keeps track of all of our communications, emails, appointments, conversations. But I feel for continuity purposes, as you're passing on the torch to the next, person that's coming on board, they don't know the clients like we know our clients, and we're not entering that information in. Even now at Baird, as I'm getting to know a lot of the clients there, that gentleman who's got 20 years of experience with them. So and kind of collecting that information and then putting it, it's a really amazing tool. You just have to use it and enter that in. But I was curious if anybody uses a CRM. Is there one that they?
We use like document management systems. So I didn't go through a sale, but I recently switched from my old firm to this one, and that was a whole process, moving all my old files and documents over here. We even use the same system in my old firm as we do in this one. So even that was still a challenge.
Sure. But easier than a box of files that you would have had to.
Quite a bit easier than a box of files, but
Right.
still a bit of a challenge.
And then there's like ghost in the machine thing. So if you go from one case management system to another and they'll sell you on, oh yeah, we can transition all this information from this thing that is no longer supported to our new system, and then it screws so many things up.
Yeah, yes, we've definitely seen that.
I'm seeing backups of the electronic documents. I work remotely and I had to take my law firm in person and do everything remote so I can work wherever I am on the road all the time.
It was a good exercise.
Oh, it is. And you quickly realize where your weaknesses are. And whether it be in communication skills or documentation or files. So I went and got a big scanner and now we scan old files and yeah, everything's on. We have spreadsheets. We have, I have a running list of what we're working on to every day, and I update it 3 times a week. I mean, it's just redundancy. So if I'm gone, who's next?
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was preparation, financials. Again, absolutely getting financials, having access to your financials, just whether it's Google Drive or some other system. I love Google Drive. It's always accessible on your phone. You can get anything, keep your tax returns and that kind of information in there, so you've got easy access to it. Definitely having electronic access to those things makes things so much easier. And then we're getting down into, so you've advertised, you've got a buyer, you start to work on terms, letter of intent, getting in, so it's the early negotiation. I'll give you the parameters of what we're going to do. Buyer's going to go through the due diligence, you're going to be turning over. That's where the electronics really going to be incredibly beneficial assistance to be able to turn over information rather than having to go scan it and then turn it over. But working through the due diligence, as they're going through the due diligence, they're going to learn more about the business. They're in the smaller, when you're in the SBA realm, there's not too much repricing that's done. Occasionally there's something that they discover that's will force a repricing, but in general it's going to wind up being the terms and you're going forward, or there's something that's just kind of rarely that just takes it apart. But usually by the time I get into due diligence, I know enough about the business and everything. I've got something pretty solid, and once we get into an offer, it's going to go through and it's going to be really close to exactly the terms that we negotiated to begin with. Notice period, I kind of discussed of having the client notices in there, having a court approval would come somewhere in that process also. Then you got the closing of the transition, and you went through a piece of that, right? So multiply that a little bit, and you got the actual process there. Any questions, Ryan?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question about valuation, and it's probably gonna get you in the next
Sure.
session, but this is largely a connection-based referral business. So when you're an attorney, you know the CPAs, you know the financial planners, you know the people, and that's how you're getting your work.
Mhm.
How do you account for that when you're trying to account for the value, or when you're valuing a business to sell, or a law firm to sell? Like, let's say it's one guy who's running the firm, has all of those connections, and he's looking to sell it and step away. Do you factor that in with like a transition plan that he's gonna come in and work with you for a year or two in the process, or how does that usually work?
Everyone's gonna be different. Everybody's gonna have their different goals. Some people want to step away. Some are more willing to, they want to be around for years. It's time to make a move. So that's gonna have, a lot to do with it. It's going to show up in the multiple that you use, so that's really where it's going to show up. It's in the pricing and in what somebody, in the number of buyers that feel like the business is right for them. So the more, then that's definitely very much, we're going to get to the value. We'll skip the value drivers right now, and then I'll go back and talk to you. So independence from the owner is something that I have in there. So I tell anybody in any business, take a vacation. If you can get away on vacation. We had a boss and he complained, he's like, man, I can't take a 2-week vacation without everybody bugging me, right? If you can take a vacation and feel good about it, know that your staff has the business and that you're not getting the calls. And we got into that point, but yeah, take a vacation, take some time off from the business, let the staff loosen the reins a little bit, let them trust and do that as much as you can, but separating yourself from the business, having the diversified client base. So even those referrals, making sure that they're coming from a variety of sources and something that can be repeated. A buyer is going to want to look and see if they can step into your shoes, right? Or you're going to be there alongside of them, right? For an extended period. Definitely extended period. You see a lot. You see requests for that they're, especially if it's an expansion from another area where somebody's coming in, they're going to want an attorney to stay on. Diversifying the client base, having access, having ways to replicate that, having systems that, so it's maybe not necessarily, the referrals are coming out of something, right? It's something that you triggered. You can demonstrate that, or you can demonstrate that the person's going to be like, okay, you're a lot like me. You might be 10 or 20 years younger, but you're kind of doing the same thing. You're picking up where so synergies along that line is what you're really looking for and what you can find a lot of times in buyers. It's really neat. That's in every business, so not just it's people that have been in business. Like I said, many of these business owners now that I'm selling businesses, they've been in the same business for 30 or 40 years, right? You're turning over, so that they're in their 60s or 70s. They're cashing out and moving along with life, and that's kind of a neat place for me to be. And then on the other side of it, about half of my buyers last year were having babies as we went through the process, right? So you get this, they're starting off young. They get the head start of being able to buy a business where the original had to build it, and they don't have the uncertainties, right? How do I figure that out? You have to figure out how to get those referrals, okay? They don't have that. You can show them that, right? So there's a benefit to that mentorship that goes along there that they're looking for. But yeah, definitely stepping into it. There's a lot of value of stepping into a business that's established versus trying to figure it out and how do you get the first check and right, all of that. So yes, having book trade review, I think we kind of having clean financials, having access to them that you can share them really quickly. The speed is builds trust, right? So if somebody's asking for something, being able to quickly communicate it and pass it along. If it takes me 2 months to get a P&L out of you from a month or two ago, and what are you doing in those 2 months to create it? Why don't your systems already support it? And then is it real? So definitely having clean books and having them available is really important. A referral based wider than the relationships, what I said on here. So making sure that you've got wider than one relationship, making sure you've got work coming from a variety of areas. We definitely will work with a lot of attorneys, CPAs, financial advisors, and just business owners, a lot of different referrals, but we try to keep our referral base very broad. And then having that support layer, having that staff that you can trust, that you can walk away from the business a little bit and know that things are going well. Sounds like you've done a really good job of having it where they can pick up right behind you if somebody drops off. Okay, so defining practice values, that's where I was about to go, and that's the valuation, and it's all. This is a sample valuation. We're going to connect this, software to this, and not too many. That's one, please.
I did.
So this is a sample of our valuations that we do. You know, Sarah's it's going to look familiar to her. It's very much comes out of our credit process at the bank. We went through a merger and I had almost 1,000 loans put on my desk that I had to value and come up with a loan loss reserve for in the next week. So I had to come up with a way to do it. And this is the origin of that. That was the origin of this. So what I do, we take or Dakota frequently does, taking the taxes. I like to rely on the taxes. It's there when I look at financial statements. There's difference in the ways they're prepared. There's consistencies in whether they're complete or not. You get the tax return, you know it's filed, it's official, it's been, it's with the federal government. There's penalties, and it accesses the database that I access on the other side of this comes from the SBA, which comes off the tax return, right? So it's a point-to-point basis for me that, when we take the tax returns, the second, third page that you see in there is actual tax return data. We take the last 3 years of tax return data, put it side by side. So just put it into this format. It's giving you information that you haven't seen before. We've made some corrections in this one that I'll kind of run through with you, but we spotted them because of exactly this format. But up top, you have the numbers, and then below you have what's called a common size analysis. The common size is your gross receipts are 100%, and then every expense that you have, every other line item below that's a percentage of that. So you got gross receipts of 100% on this one. Returns and allowances were 1%, probably some refund or something that they were doing for people. Cost of goods sold. Other income is where we spotted an error in this one. So you can see the 4%, 3%, the 4%. And when we looked at it, we could see other income up top, and it was it had other income in 2023 and 2025 and no other income in 2024. So it's like, what is that? Is this something recurring? Other income typically isn't recurring, so you typically exclude it. But this, once we drilled into it, what's that other income? Oh, it's reimbursements from clients. So it's expenses that were reimbursed. And clearly it would have been there in 2024. So they were able to go back, mine that number for us, and then we adjusted for that, put that in its proper place so that we could use that as income kind of going forward. So that's the actual page. Next page, we're making adjustments to that. So it's the compensation of the officers. This one, we made a major rent adjustment. They own their own building and it was way below market rent. So we made a pretty major rent adjustment for them on it to bring it to market. Depreciation was a little bit there that we added. It's a non-cash expense, depreciation, amortization. When there's a purchase practice, sometimes you'll see amortization in there. And then other deductions, there was fuel that they really weren't. It was personal fuels they were using when they ran all their personal phones and stuff through this. And you give them the benefit of that add back. I'll talk about it, I think, a little bit in the future, but there's add backs you could use and add backs you can't use, right? So when you're in banking, there's only, you got to really limit them. They've got to be very specific. It's got to be for items that a new buyer, a new attorney isn't going to need in there. It was a construction business that had a golf course membership, right? So there's $20,000 for the golf course membership. That's something I can easily add back and give it to the bank. It might be a little bit tougher for an attorney. Did you build your practice off of that golf course membership or not? Is it pivotal to your referral relationships that you have? So it may or may not be an add back to you, but we take those add backs, and then on page 5 is the net of those two. So we adjust them out. We work primarily off of SDE, so I adjusted both SDE and EBITDA to be the same thing here, but it's about $500,000 what this practice was throwing off. We take that, we go back to this database that we have. There's still this balance sheet spread there further. Actually, I'm gonna keep on close. All right, so we do the same thing with the balance sheet. I'm not really analyzing the balance sheet. It's your primary. There's going to be a little bit that's hard assets in a law firm. For most of it's going to be goodwill, so there's really not a lot in that balance sheet. What I'm looking for in a balance sheet is really trends. Are you borrowing? Where, you know, what's going on with cash? Are your cash increasing? Is your cash decreasing? What's with your borrowing? Is there a seller note being repaid? Are there losses or something that you can take advantage of going forward there in a sale? Those are the kind of things that I'm looking at on the balance sheet. So it's not really, it's there and it's valuable, but it's not coming into my value calculations. SBA requires a 5-year forecast, so I go ahead and build that 5-year forecast in here for them. I take it's the historic, it's working off of that common size analysis, and I can very easily, using that common size analysis, build a forward-looking analysis for them. So I do that as well. Then you get down to the meat of the multiples in the business. So the multiple is it's going to be the quality of the business. How separate is it from the owner? What does somebody think of the quality of the business? Earnings, definitely. If you're once your EBITDA gets over, it's a magic number. If your EBITDA is over $1 million, you're in a different threshold. You're in that PE threshold. Under $1 million, under 750, it's kind of lower down even, but under that, you're really in the SDE. We're using sole discretionary earnings for calculations, and it's likely going to be an SBA financed acquisition where once you get over $1 million, it's not likely to be an SBA financed acquisition. So we tap into the SBA database. It's by NAICS code, so it's by an industry. So I can't drill down into estate planning firms, but I can get law firms. So that's what we do for comparison, is using the law firm. We drill in, it's doing a statistical analysis of it. So you've got, it's a probability analysis, right? So you've got many are you've got the bell curve with the trailing tails going off. So most of your sales are going to be in this big bulk here. And then you've got the outlier. Something was wrong and it got a lower value than you would have expected. Something was extremely right or extremely valuable. They had a big relationship that was to be proven or something, that and they were able to get a higher value, higher multiple. But generally it's going to come in, it's going to say, you know, the multiples are in this area. So with law firms of this size and of this quality, this was a little bit over a 2-time multiple. So that came up with the $948,000 value that we used here. I do a little bit, any questions there? That's actually me, pause.
I know sometimes I would run into clients that would say, well, I am the business, I am everything. You know, I don't really, how am I going to sell that if I'm everything? How do you overcome that? How do you talk to your clients about that?
Sometimes they are. Bob Burson would be a very good example. Sometimes they are. Many times, if you have cash flow, as we were saying, if it's cash flow that's financeable, somebody's interested. Somebody will step into your shoes. Somebody will. It's a matter of where the multiple is and where you're. It's what you've done to build the right business. Where if you're saying you are the business, you've probably got pretty strong feelings about quality, right? So you're running a very quality business. So you got that standing out for you. You're probably gonna have the cash flow, and then it's a matter of figuring out, can somebody else pick this up? Can they build a team around it if they want to? I've had many times. You know, these, like I said, these businesses have been run 30, 40 years. They provided for families, extended families, and the owners are good, right? So there's things they could do to make it better, to make the value better, but I'm good, right? I don't want to call, I don't want to do that, right? So it's up to the buyer to go, okay, I can see what's good here, and I can lean into that, and I can start building off of it. So that's really it for the valuation. I do a couple of charts and stuff. I do an analysis of how the cash flow kind of works out. Where did I leave off on my sheet here? Gotcha. Okay, so that's where I went. So we started mentioning it a little bit. Skipping down, so I started as I started adding stuff in. Part of what I was going to say next, ran down onto the next page. So the 3 return tests is what I want to kind of talk about. There's 3 different types of returns, is what I'm really saying here. There's the income return, which is something a buyer is going to be looking at with what's the income, what's going to drive back to me. Normalizing the earnings, doing everything we do in the valuation is really giving you that income return. The other return is the debt service return. I'll pass out a debt service. So I'll talk to you about the debt service. but it's really, I say it's an algebraic formula, right? There's the valuation, and when I go into the database and look at it, but what's creating that value? What's limiting that value? And it's the banks that are limiting the value, right? There's a certain debt service they want. So when you look at it, whenever I look at it, it's automatic. My value is going to come out to a realistic debt service calculation for the bank. It's going to settle there because you do anything more, and that's where you have to get a little creative. I passed it out. Keep one for myself. Sheet off. There's got to be extra. All right, so I just took this that same $948,000 example and worked through the purchase price, the working capital. You can see under number 2 with the where it says the loan. So $948,000, $60,000 in working capital. The bank's going to want to see that you have working capital in it. Frequently, they will loan it to you, which is what this example really does. Is they're loaning you the working capital, loaning you most of the closing costs, and the SBA guarantee. And then they're saying, okay, that's the total project cost. What's 10% from that? What's our minimum investment? And you can see the SBA loan is $500. I think was what it wound up being lower than the actual purchase price, just because they're rolling in all that stuff for you. I took that. I took the principal, the interest rate, current SBA interest rate, and came up with the annual debt service. And then when you work through kind of those, it's again, so my whole point to this is to say, you work through a bank and what the debt service is going to be for a bank 1.2 times, and you're going to come out with the same kind of value calculation. Yes, sir.
The reason a lot of business purchases fail is because a successful business, when you had a huge debt service, the cost of doing business, there's no profit left.
Yes.
Or no positive cash flow left.
Things have to go the right direction.
That's right.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So that's where, a lot of that, and that's where we started talking about the earnouts and when you're doing a law practice, frequently there is some kind of earnout or something that.
When I sell a business for a client, I say, be very happy with your down payment if you're holding paper. But many times it's all you get.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, that's an important, especially with law practice is a good example of that, right? It's all goodwill, so somebody can come in and destroy it, and if you build a note on that, then you're.
If everyone knows how to read a note, it's no longer.
Right.
We must have misrepresented something.
Right. Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah. There's definitely if you were going to hold a note on a law practice, you would want some other kind of hard collateral. Maybe look for their house or something. Right?
I think
you can't have my life savings without an unsecured loan. It's not happening.
I would think they were too stupid to take care of my client if they agreed to that.
What did that determine? You've got that good of a practice. That's the alternative. So okay. Anyway, so that's all I really wanted to show you with that page. And then flipping back into, we've already covered this thing. We're going to skip split layer. Did that. Lead time. So again, it's today it might be 20 years, 4 years from today. It might be 2 or 3 years. But getting the clean books, going in and preparing now, and you've got time, right? You've got time to get prepared and time to do things. It does take time. It's how do you eat an elephant? It's one bite at a time. Of course, I'm trying to encourage everybody to commission evaluation, get evaluation, so you get that point in time, you can look at it and understand your business there. The value that we use is another important thing. So I'll see valuations that are done off of the discounted cash flow is the most frequent error that I see. And it's proper from if you read the books, if you're going through the valuation classes, it's proper. It's a proper way to value. But it's not proper for an operating business. How can you predict the cash flows going forward? That's what you're discounting, right? So talk about setting yourself up for failure. So in my mind, it's not asset value, obviously, because you wind up with pennies on the dollar instead of all of your goodwill and never capturing that. It's not the discounted cash flow because you can't forecast, you can't get it right. You don't know if there's a recession or whatever happening down the road. It's the most probable selling price. It's what it's going to sell for in the market. It's looking at comparables and saying, okay, this is what's sold. This is a similar law practice. This is what's sold, and that's what you need to bring back and use for your valuation. So if you do wind up with a valuation that has discounted cash flow, push back against it. Waiting the forecast, looking forward, I looked over time, so it's COVID's a really good example, right? You had 2020 that you'd have a year in 20, so they were performing as normal in 2019. 2020 happens, and whatever happened to that business, usually it was something really bad that happened there, but then 2021 could have been more of the same bad, or it could have been taken off the other trajectory, right? What do you do with that 2020? See, I don't wait it. It's my waiting in there, and to look at 2021 and try and build it going forward was really challenging. What were they doing in 2019? What's that trajectory? What's the business going to look like going forward? Now we've got all that behind us. So I'm not even having to put 2020 in there anymore and reduce it, but you're looking at the trends, looking at what's happened over time. If that hadn't been to where we could figure out what the other income, I might have chosen to wait different years differently. Obviously, the closest years is typically going to be what you're looking at the most for weighting. So looking at comparing today's financials to those financials, what I'm saying with weighting, going back further in time, there's going to be more discrepancies, not more discrepancies. Usually there's growth, right? So that's what you want to see is growth on return, and the current year is what you're going to use to go forward with that. Reading the forecast, normalizing earnings add backs. We kind of went through that when we did the valuation. Personal expenses run through the practice. Definitely I see a lot of that you may or may not be able to add it back. If you can, if it's really documented well and systematized, then you might be able to, but especially, banks have banks are regulated, right? And they got people looking over their shoulders, and they can't encourage you to be doing it until it's taxes, right? You're paying your taxes, you're not paying your taxes. They don't know, but that's definitely going forward, normalizing undercompensation, personal expenses run through the practice. Non-recurring items, we kind of spoke about that, whether it recurs. I had a construction company that had a large, they should have been expensing, and it was a mold, right? So they were using molds. Every single time they did a project, it was a different mold. Should have been expensing those molds as they went along. Instead, they were capitalizing them and put them on their balance sheet. We went through and did a one-time reduction on that. So they wrote all that off, and you can show back that, right? You can add that back, even though it was hundreds of thousands of dollars. It completely clobbered their year of income, it looked like, until you recast it. But you can recast for those non-recurring items, and banks will understand it and make the right case for it. Related party and below market terms, I think with law tends to be the real estate tends to be that, right? That's the adjustment that you saw in there. So that's the main related party, but there may be other things that you do that's kind of a friendly transaction. Not usually something that's going to come up too much, like I said, other than real estate. That's the main item. 3 return tests we did. Owner readiness. So we're down to the wire. Would I acquire my practice today? Would I acquire, right? Would I pay for that? So that's the you flip it around. You flip it around on the other shoes, and it's okay. What you're asking for. It's when you're looking at it, it's your baby, right? It's your family that we talked about. Everything's invested in this. Your personality, who you are is invested in this. It's incredibly valuable to you. Somebody else coming in to buy it doesn't necessarily have that same love and passion for you. They're looking at the numbers. They're saying, okay, what can I do from here? And that's how so you have to put yourself into their shoes to be able to really sell your practice. Could it pay a market salary for somebody doing it and still show a profit? That's going to be a natural. Many practices are profitable, very profitable. How much of the work runs without me today? We really kind of address that too, right? So knowing having as much of the business operate without you is critically important. After tax proceeds, I definitely say talk to your CPAs. Better than that, talk to your wealth management, talk to your financial planners. But what am I doing with that? There's some creative ways. And the taxes generally aren't as bad in these smaller businesses. They're not as bad as people are expecting to begin with, but there's always something you can do to try and carve them down. So definitely talk to your wealth manager about that.
Those trusted advisor relationships, whether it's your CPA or your financial advisor, early on, because they can help you strategize ahead of time what that looks like, how to differentiate your compensation, how to what does that capital gain look like? Having that conversation early on, so you're not doing it at the last minute, is always the best way to approach it. And then what is that, going back to the psychology of money, what does that look like afterwards? Your identity as an attorney, what does that look like now? And coming to, maybe a therapist needs to be in that circle. Because I mean, that's a real thing that you have to overcome.
I'm married to one.
Okay. Excellent.
Does it help?
Absolutely. I couldn't afford to hire her, so I'm married.
That's a slippery slope at a dinner conversation. Isn't it?
Yes, she's giving up on me though.
I'm someone who sees a lot of people retiring, because I'm somewhat younger and some of us share this, share this particular age bracket. The transition to retirement is very understated and is very not given the credit or the mental health support that it deserves. Retirement is a big deal because you just spent the last 30 to 50, if you're Terry McCarthy, years doing exactly the same thing, and it becomes your identity, it becomes your value to this world. You need to take retirement and what the psychology of money, what it is you see as your identity going forward seriously, because I've seen too many people just fold.
You have to replace it with something.
What is going on? You were a perfectly functioning human about 2 months ago. What are you doing? So just FYI.
Yeah, great
Well,
point.
one of the things I often thought about is old attorneys like Terry and other people. I mean, our biggest, we waste all our time during the week working, where really our biggest value would be to generate new clients. If we just stuck around and brought new clients to the firm, would be worth 10 times, but daily production work is. But I don't know if there's a way to value that when you're transitioning a firm or selling a firm, and paying you for this firm this much. If you stay around, and bring more clients, you get paid for that.
But we're giving both.
There's usually some kind of arrangements you can make to.
You still have a counsel relationship. The client still knows that you're somehow involved.
That's incredibly important, especially institutional knowledge, because I'm kind of Terry McCarthy's up and comer.
Right, I could have 10 new clients every week.
Yeah.
I told
You have a lot to learn.
I do. I'm aware. Don't you worry. I am fully aware, but luckily he's one of the old guard that cannot help to come into work. So I'm not gonna stop him,
Right.
but I am going to make sure that I run head on the files so that, when he comes and goes, I'm not like, okay, what just happened? Are we, where are we? So, but yes, having that person that just automatically on name recognition brings in 20% of whatever. And then the ability to say, what is this? And they're like, oh yeah, I did that in 1978. I'm like, okay, good. Can you help me understand what the hell you did?
Even the same firms, you got Bob, I think,
Yes.
Bob Summers did a lot of this very early on.
Yes, he did.
And was thinking and put people in place and theories.
Yeah, put Owen Schultz
Put him
kind
in
of in place.
Yeah.
Terry McCarthy attempted to a couple times, and we're basically the internal exit structure where we bring in associates and or counsel types that are running their own firms, have their own book of business, and then plug them in and keep that institutional knowledge and that person around for as long as they choose at whatever level they choose, and allow that new talent to kind of grow a little bit within that internal structure. So there's already the support layer. There's already a certain amount of capital base. Of course, you're trying to look for good fits as far as psychology, good fits as far as speciality, culture, good fits as far as they're bringing in work. I had my own practice for about 1.5 years. And so I was a relatively good plug and play as far as that was concerned.
I was hoping this would come up with the Q&A, but that is the gold standard for professional services like this, where you soft step your way out. And Bill can tell you about ways to inject money on the front end of that agreement. If it becomes a formal agreement with SBA lending and so forth, an internal sale, internal succession. We have more than one example where that's worked extremely well to all the points that are being made. So you're not really closing a sale and writing off the offering from your Porsche, but you are closing a transaction. It's defined over time with a payout. But Bill, it might be a good time to talk about injecting funds on the front end. So you are happy with, you're smiling with the down payment. so to speak.
Right.
But you're around for all the points that you're making, all the way around the room, including CRM advancements and everything that you're talking about.
The good news is that I could never afford to buy a part of McCarthy Summers.
Right.
Like, there's no
Right.
way on God's
100%.
green earth that was gonna happen. But I was able to cover the monthly nut of what McCarthy Summers would need to have an up-council person come in. And based off your spreadsheet of $947,000 as a value, McCarthy Summers is worth much more
Oh,
than
yeah,
that.
definitely.
But yet my monthly nut is about 13 grand.
Mm.
So I can do that. I could never do that, and I got a value, but it also allowed for Terry to kind of come and go as he pleased, to have a plug and play. And I'm in land use and real estate. Land use is not one of your more obvious, more available specialities. So it, especially since unfortunately there was an exit strategy for about 5 years, and that exit strategy moved to another firm. It was kind of we need someone now. That really worked out super well, because there's no way I could have entered. There was no way I could have entered McCarthy Summers in any kind of financial way otherwise.
It's good for the buyer and the seller.
That's what every transaction is negotiated, right? So it's how do you get to a point where everybody's happy. So,
It brings up a different point though, how many buyers are there? Cause we notice a discrepancy between how many people that are exiting versus how many people that are coming up. And there've been multiple situations where an exit strategy was created, but people decided, the younger generation, my counterparts, were like, this is stressful, this sucks. Get out of here, and they leave, or they go to another firm for more money because it is stressful, it is challenging. And this business services world is not getting easier. It's getting more demanding, more high paced. AI is great, but it's not good enough, and it's not gonna be, in my opinion, just my opinion. So is there really enough buyers to fit those positions, especially in a market like Stewart? I don't know.
Yeah.
Going forward.
Yeah, there are, right? It's unbelievable. We have no problem finding buyers.
Good, fantastic.
Yeah.
Is your typical buyer somebody coming from out of town who wants to basically create a new practice or add to their existing practice? What are you seeing as the buyers of law firms?
Yeah, definitely out of town, coming into town, definitely in town though, younger, wanting to grow their firms by acquisition. I absolutely see that. I see earlier, I said, that there's people that think they can come from out of state and they can't.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of, education that goes on there so that they know what they can do. And if they're really serious about coming to Florida, go ahead and get apply to the bar and start going along that path and get admitted, and then you got less uncertainty since if you're selling the firm, you're not gonna want to wait around for somebody to maybe pass the bar so they can buy your business. You're not gonna have that condition in the contract. So.
And your clients aren't probably gonna want to have a brand new baby lawyer, maybe just in Florida, taking over their finals.
Takes time. So same with wealth management or CPAs. If there's a subordinate person there that's starting to slowly integrate, and surface as a leader, it doesn't happen in a year, 8 months. It takes a little bit of time. I know of at least one 10-year buyout, but the senior partner that sold, even though it was a 10-year payout, he was a 1% shareholder for that term. It's almost over, but worked out extremely well. His name was still on the sign. He was still available if need be to look up that case from 1978 or whatever. And it settles a lot of the issues that are going on in the room right now.
Talking about the name on the sign, when there's a third party sale, what do they typically do with the name of the firm? If it was the name of an individual that was selling it, do they slowly change it over time to goodwill, or how does that work?
I recommend they slowly change over. Don't change it at all, right? Can you keep it the same? Frequently, people have different opinions. You'll see them change immediately. You'll see everything. But yeah,
Kind of defeats some of the purpose.
definitely. Yes. Yes. You can smooth that transition out. That's, I'm a fan of generic names that aren't even, it's much more broad. So it's not tied to it. That's, you're tying yourself to that name and to, okay, so what happens when you create a question? It might even be a question, right? It might be, McCarthy Summit, right? And Bob's in
Yeah.
Orlando and right, it's.
I specifically said, do not put me on the sign.
Right.
Too many names on that sign, stop it.
Exactly.
And by the way, I'm doing the work, so who cares?
And some of them are really long.
Exactly.
Does your firm still have a tap?
Taps, these are 150 years old. They're,
Yeah.
He's
Right.
gone.
Some.
it's the sons of the president. That's what it's named after.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's a Taft, just Tenius or a Hollister.
Right. But so and Taft is what you tend to go, so Taft is, it's easy, it's memorable, it's something, but. Yeah, so
Is it easier
definitely-
to sell a law firm if it's just a generic name? You know?
Stuart
Matthew?
Landry.
I think any.
I have a
business
question,
does-
please.
Oh, yeah, okay, untie.
Got a question?
So wait, yes, sir.
Hi, excuse me, quick question. So how does the SBA handle real estate? If you want to sell your actual building with your practice, does the SBA allow that as part of the entire package loan? Or is that a separate transaction?
Yeah, no, I say they encourage it. It could be a separate transaction if there's reasons to have a different entity own your real estate versus the firm, but you can still usually, an SBA it's, if you can include it in the same transaction, there's, and if it's over 50% of the value of 50% of the acquisition price, then you actually extend the term. So there's big benefits to having real estate in the transaction. You can do a 25-year term instead of a 10-year term, right? So typical practice is going to sell, it's just practice sell. It's going to sell over a 10-year term, but if you've got, if it's $1 million, 500,000 is a practice and 500,000 is, or maybe 600,000 real estate, 400,000 is a practice, then you can be able to get a 25-year term. It's going to smooth out the cash flow and help you. Somebody's going to like the real estate. Some people like real estate, love real estate. Some people don't like real estate, but I think more people like real estate than don't like it. Yeah, no, absolutely. Definitely encouraged. And it's really big. There's even 504 loans is another. There's other ways. You can use a 7A, extend the term, or you can use a 504 loan and get some beneficial terms to it.
So I think you've identified that the internal exit is probably the better of the two options. But if, let's say, you're in a really hard practice to find a succession plan, or you're a solo practitioner, just would have a hard time bringing someone on.
Mhm.
What are the things that those firms that are just don't have the internal option? What are the things that the small firms can maximize their value to a third party?
It's the list that we really went through. So it's that independence, being able to stay away from, I think like on the first or second page.
That's why Bill's looking, but besides doing all those things in preparation,
Yeah,
what that seller's looking for is a buyer that's also in a comparable, area of practice or practice area. So you don't go out looking until, that's a very confidential thing to do, but
Yes.
firms like us can do that for you. So if you don't have the internal, which is a pretty big bridge to cross, lucky to have the right talent, that might be an option.
The things you're going to do to build value, it's across the board. It's going to be the same thing, right? And that's even the name was a great discussion that I should have included myself in here. That was a great point that, whatever you can do to improve the value and decrease the separation, improve the reportability and, human resources thing. That's where I love the ESOP because it doesn't apply here, but, it's a cultural improvement, right? That you're making in business. So anything you can do to culturally improve the business and keep it going along.
So do you have a retirement age that you think you want to take? How far in advance should you start working towards this?
No.
Today.
Be thinking about it from the beginning, and it's literally, yeah.
Is there an average time frame for finding a successor and or a buyer?
Yeah.
And if you're going to market with your business, I say to give it a year. It's just doing, it's getting it up, getting it marketed, vetting through finding the right attorney, especially with the law practice, right? So you got, a year, and you got 6 months to kind of market and 6 months to work on it, gets close.
How many law firms have you guys sold in the last 5 years?
3.
Size wise, like around $1 million or in sell pricing or $5
All around, yeah, higher and lower.
That was over what time period did you say? 5 years?
Yeah.
How many?
About 3.
One of the hard things to do to get motivated to sell your firm is a sole. I mean, The earning, the value is gonna be 1 or 2 times earnings. And you have to do all this transition stuff. That kind of pretty decided, it'd be easier, to just work 2 more years.
And that's a decision made a lot of times.
I think my main motivation would be to keep my wonderful paralegals employed till they're old enough to retire. But I pay them way more than most people want to pay a paralegal.
Sometimes I say that they're ready to retire too, though, is the.
They tell me if I die, they'll just stuff me and put me in my chair. I'm just waiting on it to retire with the client.
Weekend emergency, yeah.
They do all the work anyway.
We've got AI now, you might be a hologram.
I've seen AI work by not something,
Yes.
especially in estate planning.
Yeah.
Bill, I'm curious, how, if, as kind of a thought exercise, how would this $948,000 valuation, how would this look if you applied the discounted earnings method that you say don't apply? But I was in 2 mediations in the last 10 days where $10 million businesses, ongoing businesses, alleged usurpation of opportunities and client debt. And the expert on the other side applies the discounted cash flow earnings methodology and throws all these discounts at it. Or takes the opposite track if they're the buyer and they don't apply any discounts at all. And they say, well, even though it's a 49% or 50% non-control interest, we shouldn't have to discount it because you stole the clients and therefore pay us full value, a 4x or 6x multiple without discounts. So how do you, like, first, how would this valuation look if the buyer comes along and says, I want to apply discounted cash flow earnings? And how do you respond to that and say why it's not applicable?
Yeah. Typically what I see, they come in way too high is what I almost always see, but it's one, you can change 1 or 2 little data points, right? It's the trajectory, but it's all coming out of that. That's where I mean, it's clearly not the correct approach. You don't have consistent earnings, you don't have consistent net income. Even if your earnings are kind of consistent, right? You've got the expenses, cost of goods sold. Right now, wages are increasing for everybody. That's all got an impact, and that's all going to have a negative impact on that long-term value. So yeah, bringing it back to a market-based approach would be the bottom line. What has the business done? If you're looking at it going forward, sort of in a sale, it'd be different in a litigation, right? In a sale,
Historical versus future predictions. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, people predict anything. Yeah, so prove it.
Right.
Well, we've hit our time.
Thank you.
If Bill's willing, he can stay around and answer some questions if you have them, but we're gonna turn off the Zoom and stop the recording. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks for
coming. Thanks to Bill.
Right.
Busy. That's why I want to miss a good thing.
Yeah, you too. How's it going?